Good evening, and welcome to the first episode of the John List podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am your host. This podcast will be focused on the man in this picture, John List. It is also about his family. On the far left is his first wife of almost 20 years, Helen List, and their three children, Patricia, John, and Frederick. The story is also about John's elderly mother, Alma List, who lived with the family until the end. This case has been around since 1971, and even though it was solved in the late 80s, it is still a very interesting but also tragic story. I have seen a few programs about this case, and I also have a few books, as you can see. And unfortunately, based on the title of this book alone, I am pretty sure you have a bad feeling of what this case is going to be about. This book was written by Timothy Benford. He has interviewed nearly everyone who has been involved in the List case. I first heard about this book when I saw an episode from American Justice. It was called To Save Their Souls. There's also an episode of Forensic Files that's called The List Family Murders. Now, this book, it was actually written by John List himself. And I bet you're wondering, why would I buy this? Well, he wrote this in prison, actually, and I bought it after he passed away. And based on a few lies that I caught him in the interview he has done, this book is definitely going to be more factual than this one. But at the same time, I just wanted to know what he had to say, and I'm pretty sure I can debunk it very easily. Yeah. So, I hope this case will be interesting to you, and you may also recognize me as Moonwalker Tanya from the MJ Innocent podcast. If you haven't checked out that channel, please do. One rule I do have to say is I want to keep these two channels separate, so please, John List comments only on this channel. Thank you. Yeah, and part of the reason why I was interested in this case was because I wanted to be a lawyer. Unfortunately, I couldn't pursue that career, but doing a podcast is my way of showing how I could have been a really good defense lawyer. And my other channel definitely represents that. So I will give you a little bit of a summary about John List, and then we'll learn about some stuff as we go along throughout the podcast. Okay, so he was a very quiet, odd individual, and he didn't have many friends, and based on the way he was raised was part of that problem. And it was also an issue with how he couldn't become successful. Because even though he was good at his job, which he was an accountant, he was having trouble holding on to a job because he didn't have the social skills that you also need. He was a very religious man, but he would always depend on God to solve his problems. And whether if you are religious or not, there's no judgment here. I actually started going to church again recently, and one thing that I have learned in today's service alone is even though praying is a good thing, there are things that you're probably going to have to change about yourself as well. And that's one thing that John List did not take into consideration. He made some bad choices. And I think this case will also be a very good example of what happens when you keep your emotions bottled in. All right. So I think that will be it for the first episode. I just wanted to introduce myself and the channel. yeah, so if you are interested in this case, please consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, I will see you soon.